Good afternoon, everyone. Here are the topics for this afternoon reporting. First, assessment instruments and grading learners, to be discussed by Ms. Gumahin, Ms. Halinon, and Ms. Hamero. Second, assessment tools in 21st century classroom, to be discussed by Mr. Hamisulamin, Ms. Humawan, and Ms. Limbago. Third, techniques in classroom assessment, to be discussed by Ms. Lomolo, Ms. Lorena, and Ms. Solon. And lastly, appropriateness of assessment tools, to be discussed by Ms. Solatario and Mr. Sanchez.
Once again, good afternoon to each and everyone. Karong hapuna, mamahimo ka na mungulman ang inyong mga dalunggan para paminawon ang mga nagkalain-lain topic na effort na mamahimong hiya sa lakang sa pagtudlo. Sama-sama, unsang importante ang assessment instruments in grading learners. We, as aspiring teachers, we must be unique in treating and teaching our learners. As assessment instrument is the method and used to collect the evidence of students' competence. To go deeper for the topic discussion, let us listen to our first topic reporters. Pasok!
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Rachel Hamero. My topic is all about assessment instrument and grading learners. First, effective grading presents suggestion for making classroom grading more fair, more time efficient, and more conducive to learning. Grading is the process by which a teacher assesses student learning through classroom tests and assignments. The context in which good teachers establish the process and the dialogue that surrounds grades and defines their meaning to various audiences. This has 12 principles. 12 principles for managing the grading process. Number 1. Appreciate the complexity of grading. Use it as a tool for learning. Grading is a socially constructed and context-dependent process, and no grade or no grading system is immutably right by some eternal standard. The rule of grades can change over time, and they have different meaning for different groups of people. There are 4 major roles of the grading process. First, evaluation. Second, communication. And third, motivation. And fourth, organization. Second, number 2, substitute judgment for objectivity. There is no absolutely objective evaluation. The teacher must develop and render an informed and professional judgment within the context of the institution, students, and their future employees. Number 3, distribute time effectively. Spend enough time to make a thoughtful, professional judgment with reasonable consistency. Then move on. Repeatedly reviewing work does not lead to perfect objectivity. Number 4, be open to change. So, your grades and grading system will be interpreted as and used within the system. That is not the one you wish for or the one you experience as a student. Number 5, listen and observe. Students attach a meaning to grades that must affect learning. Be clear with the students about these meanings. In establishing grades, you're invoking a set of cultural beliefs and values that will shape the learning potential of your grading process. The better you understand the culture, the better you can manage the grading process. Number 6, communicate and collaborate with students. Explain the criteria and standards you hold for their work and seek their active engagement in the learning process. Collaborate with the students to work toward common goal. Number 7, integrate grading with other key processes. Make grading integral to everything else you do. Number 8, seize a teachable moment. Informal feedback and discussion about grades is good for students. Emotional moments can be a valuable teaching moment in which lesson and values can be imparted to your student. Number 9, make student learning the primary goal. Values can clash between internal and external forces. What do teachers need to? Remember, to hold learning rather than in reporting to outsiders as the most important goal of grading. Most student involvement leads to more learning and personal development. So, their involvement in learning is in part determined by their perception of faculty members, interest and friendliness toward them, including the fairness and helpfulness of the testing and grading system, and the teacher communication about their work and their grades. Number 10. Be a teacher first, a gatekeeper last. Understand the student, believe in them, figure out what they need and help them to learn no matter their background. Provide all students an equal chance to learn. Number 11. Encourage learning-centered motivation. Motivation is a key to learning, and grades have the ability to provide this motivation to an extent. Attitude towards grades more than the grades themselves negatively affects student motivation to learn. Number 12. Emphasizes student involvement. This is the bottom line for learning. There is 6 suggestions to ensure that your time is well spent and that your grading leads to learning. Number 1. Consider what you want your student to learn. Effective reading practices begin when the teacher says to herself, by the end of the course, I want my student to be able to concrete verbs such as define, argue, solve, and create, and more helpful for course planning than vague verbs such as know or understand, or passive verbs such as be exposed to. Number 2. Select assignment tests that measure what your value must. Choose assignments that are likely to elicit from your students the kind of learning you want to measure. Choose assignments that are interesting and challenging to your student. Use peer group collaboration. So, number 3, construct a course outline. So, start with what your student to learn, not what you want to cover in the class. This is the major assignment, and the test that will both teach and test that learning. Combine test and assignment in a bare bones course outline. 2. See whether your assignment fit your course goals and whether they are manageable in terms of workload. So the bare bones outline should describe student learning goals, and where in the course these goals will be assessed by major assignments or exams that fill in where the material will be taught. There will be other smaller assignments, quizzes, and activities along the way, but concentrate on the bare essential to see exactly where you can assess the student learning you value most. Number 4, seek test and assignment for fit and feasibility. Make sure assignment fit with learning goals and ensure the workload is feasible for yourself and your student. Ensure they are reasonable and strategically placed and sustainable. Number 5, collaborate with your student to set and achieve goals. Through discussion, try to reach agreement and clear understanding about the goals of the course and the reason for your major assignment and test. Get students to develop their own personal and learning goals for the course and the strategies by which they can accomplish those goals. Number 6, make assignment and test instruction clear to students. Develop a careful and thoughtful assignment sheet per student for each major assignment or test. That is all about my report. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. This is Rufil Halinon, and this is the continuation of our topic about assessment instructions in grading learners. Good assessment must begin and end in a classroom, using the grading process as the basis for departmental assessments, and it is based on a two-part theoretical stance. The first part that holds critical thinking, problem solving, or whatever learning you're trying to measure is called context specific. These various things can be taught and assessed in the context of a particular institution's and department's mission. and within a particular teacher's semester-long work with a particular body of knowledge and a particular group of students over time. The second part of theoretical stance holds that these various things that are trying to be assessed are not new to the faculties, like when an assessment system acknowledges what faculty are already doing. It can be more easily capture the faculty commitment and buy-in that are valuable to institutions and required by. Within these two parts of theoretical stance, the nature of assessment tasks changes in an important way. Instead of having to find externally a definition of the learning you want and a way of assessing it. With the grading process having no relevance, the task is to make systematic, explicit, and public the goals of learning and the assessment of learning that are already happening on campus, often in connection with the grading process. Then, as needed, the task is to improve campus teaching, student learning by the regional accrediting agencies, and assessment.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Narini Gumahin. I am the last person to tackle the assessment instrument in grading the learners. In line, we have a rubrics. This is a written criteria that details expectations of what students will need to know and be able to do in order to receive a given grade. Rubrics help instructors to develop clear learning objectives for their students, and if provided to students prior to the activity, this serves as a guide to their efforts. And of course, in giving, for example, assignments, assignments or activities, it is very essential to create a rubric so that they know what exactly is expected of them. Next in line is the oral presentations. This is a form of assessment that calls on students to use the spoken word to express their knowledge and understanding of a topic. It allows capture of not only the research that the students have done, but also a range of cognitive and transferable skills. One is the portfolios, are collections of students' work representing a selection of performance, a compilation of academic work, and other forms of educational evidence assembled for the purpose of evaluating coursework, learning progress, and academic achievement. Also determining whether students have met learning standards or other academic requirements. Instrument is the exams. It a test to show the knowledge and ability of a student. Exams can be written or a practical test. In addition, this is exams or a test is an educational assessment intended to measure a test taker's knowledge, skills, or classification in many other topics. A test may be administered verbally, on paper, on a computer, or in a predetermined area that requires test taker to demonstrate or perform a set of skills.
Thank you, reporters, for the very comprehensive report. And yes, it is true that assessment instruments is part of the assessment goals. That includes oral and written questions, observations, demonstration checklists, case studies, recognition, and workplace portfolios. And before we go to the second topic discussion, which is the assessment tools in 21st century classroom, maghatag ko na kong gamay ni idea kung unsa pagayon ang role sa assessment tools in 21st century classroom. Sa karon nga panahon, kinahanglan nga makigtubayayon ang mga estudyante sa ilang mga magtutudlo gamit ang mga bagong teknolohiya para makabot ang dinilihang feedback sa pag-improve sa usa ka estudyante. Ug dili ko tason aron mapalahong ang pagpasabot sa maong topic atong paminaw ang second topic reporters. Pasok!
Thank you, Sir Armand. To give you an information about assessment tools in 21st classroom, we have invited speakers to share their knowledge about the said topic. We have Ma'am Grace and Ma'am Karel May. To give us an idea about what is affirmative assessment, we have Ma'am Karel May. Ma'am Karel May?
So, daghang salamat Sir Ryan o Sir Armand o maayong adlaw. So, for today, I will be discussing one of the assessment tools in the 21st century classroom, the formative assessment. So, unsa man jud ang formative assessment? So, it is an assessment for learning wherein it involves teachers using evidence about what learners know and can do to inform and improve their teaching. At the same time, it is an assessment as learning, wherein through the teacher's immediate feedback, it enables the students to take responsibility for their own learning and identify areas where they need help. So basically, formative assessment is beneficial for both the teachers and the learners, wherein si teacher identify niya if need ba to initiate improvement in the way he or she teach. At the same time, si student ma-aware siya what are her strengths and weaknesses and reflects on her own performance. So, another question is, how are learners assessed in formative assessment? Alright, they are assessed in two different ways. It can be individual formative assessment and collaborative formative assessment. So when we say individual assessment, where students demonstrate independently what has been learned or mastered through a range of activities such as quizzes, performances, models, or even electronic or virtual presentations. So we also have collaborative formative assessment, wherein it allows students to support each other's learning. For example, discussions, role plays, and other group activities. So another question is, kanusa? So when can we use formative assessment in the different parts of the lesson? Yes, we can use it before, during, and after the lesson. Before the lesson, it informs the teacher about students' understanding of a lesson and provides basis for making instructional decisions. So, in this part, the teacher identifies, okay, kanina student na siya previous knowledge about this topic. Or, as student 0, wala yun siya idea. So, I need to make intensive explanations, discussion, intensive ako, on a lot of examples. So, diha siya mag-base sa iyang instructions. And then, methods for this are agree or disagree activities, open-ended questions, the KWL activities are what I know, what I want to know, and what I learned. And then during the lesson, it is an assessment wherein the teacher can decide whether to review, to reteach, remediate, or enrich lessons, or move on to the next lesson. So, it informs the teacher as well of the progress of the students in relation to the development of the learning competencies. So, basically, during the lesson, dito na mag-base ang teacher if the students needs reinforcement or remediation. Like, before sa lesson, zero ideas man. So, during the lesson, okay, nakasabot di ay. Or, wala dahil sila nakasabot. So, dito siya mag-decide whether to remediate or to move on to the next lesson. Examples of methods used during the lessons are quizzes, simulation activities, recitations, and observations. And then after the lesson, so it assesses whether the learning objectives were achieved or not. It also allows the teachers to evaluate the effectiveness of instruction. So those learners who requires remediation or enrichment should be helped at this stage using appropriate teaching strategies. So, di ba na-identify naman during the lesson if those particular students need remediation, and after the lesson, dito rin ma-apply ang appropriate strategy to help those students who needs enrichment. So, example for this after the lesson are the methods of checklist, performance tasks that emanates from the lesson objectives, the short quizzes, and other written works or essays. The information or feedback gathered from formative assessment will help teachers ensure that all learners are supported while they are developing understanding and competencies related to curriculum standards. These also prepare them for summative assessments. So, teacher should keep a record of formative assessment results but shall not be used as basis in grading. So, hindi siya basihan sa pag-ano ang formative assessment. So, I guess that would be all for formative assessment, and I hope I made myself clear with my discussions on the topic. So, advance Merry Christmas to all. Back to you, Sir Armand, Sir Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Karome. We have now another speaker to explain to us about summative assessment. We have Ma'am Grace. Ma'am Grace?
Hello everyone, and welcome to Teachings and Education Summative Assessments Evaluation of Long-Term Learning. So why should we use summative assessments in education? So summative assessments are absolutely necessary because students in school need to master essential skills and knowledge. Also, summative assessments are used to evaluate students' learning, skill acquisition, and academic achievement at the end of conclusion of a defined instructional period. Typically at the end of a project, unit, course, semester, program, or school year. So when to use summative assessment? So summative assessments are something that should be planned for. Students should be afforded an ample time to study and prepare for it. So the summative assessments should be given at the end of a unit, period, and courses. Now, here are some examples of some of the assessments. First, portfolios. Portfolios, they are great alternative assessments for students who struggle with test-taking skills. Next, project. These are the most favorite. Students appreciate project assessments from their teachers. Third one is interviews. They are most typical, but teachers can learn a lot about student knowledge by simply asking questions. Next one, essays. Essays usually require higher order thinking skills, and depth request is awarded properly. Next is a test. Test may be standardized like a part or teacher created like midterms and finals. The last one is presentations. Presentations being able to present or shows mastery as well as developed speaking skills. So here are some tips for utilizing some of the assessments. All students learn differently, and great teachers differentiate instruction to help optimize student learning. So when incorporating different instructional practices, teachers should also provide a variety of assessments that match with the types of instruction. Varying assessments give students different opportunities to succeed. Clear instructions. Provide clear instructions if the student does not understand the question. You can expect them to get the correct answer. Have students show work. So there may be times when students forget to circle an answer, or maybe they make a small mistake. Nevertheless, a minor mistake should not have a major effect on a grade. Depth of knowledge. Simply able to recall or recite information isn't enough anymore. So assess students' ability to synthesize, evaluate, and apply content knowledge. So next, give students enough time to test. So standardized tests like the SATs are a little bit different, but students should not have to rush through a test simply to pass. Also, give enough study time. Some of the assessments measure long-term learnings. Summative assessments are not meant to be top assessments or tests. And lastly, assess what was covered during class. So teachers have no right to be material on a test if they do not cover that material with their students. So placing uncovered material on a test will often cost you the trust of your students. So that's all for summative assessment. Hope you guys learned a lot, and thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Grace. And now, I will give to you some examples on applying the formative and summative assessment in this new normal learning situation. In formative assessment, we have what we call synchronous and asynchronous. When we say asynchronous, it is like face-to-face, but in the platform of like Google Meet, Zoom, that there is a discussion or assessment happen in a live situation. Okay, so by this, the students present at least two contrasting pieces of anonymous work and ask learners which is better and why. So this is one example. Now, to say asynchronous, this is not a live or straight-to-straight assessment, but the teacher will just give, for example, the learner a paper-based or digital journal to keep a record of what they learned each day. On the other hand, in summative assessment, we can have it through online distance learning on the way that it can be reaction paper or reflection paper submitted through email. Hence, in this new normal situation, especially in the 21st classroom, the technology is very important. We can use technology here. And the rule of the different platforms like Google Meet, Zoom, and other platforms is very important. And hence, those are examples on assessment tools that we can apply in the new normal learning in the 21st century classroom. Back to you, Sir Arman.
Thank you, topic reporters. Tataw o klaro kaayo nga dako ang role sa mga teknolohiya sa pag-assess o pagsusi sa atong mga learners labi na karon panahon na nga anaa pa ang peligro dala ni COVID-19. Sa gikaingon pa, ang teknolohiya nagagiya sa mga magtutudlo aron sa pagsusi o pag-assess o gahaon sa mga estudyante aron kini makakaton o mamayong usab na maayong modelo diya sa katilingban. And now, let us listen to the reporters of the topic, Techniques in Classroom Assessment. Pasok!
Hi everyone, I am Marie Chris Lomolho and I'm going to report about classroom assessment techniques. What is classroom assessment techniques? Classroom assessment techniques is generally simple, non-graded, anonymous, in-class activities designed to give you and your students useful feedback on how well students are learning or are prepared to learn their class materials. And there are 3 levels of classroom assessment techniques. First is techniques for assessing prior knowledge, recall, and comprehension. Second, techniques for assessing skill in application and performance. And third, techniques for assessing skill in synthesis and creative thinking. And these are the following examples of techniques for assessing prior knowledge, recall, and comprehension. So first is focused listing. It is an assessment that focuses on one concept, term, or topic. Students are asked to provide several ideas related closely with one concept, term, or topic. Focused listing works well to introduce a topic and as something to return to as a wrap-up so that learners can compare before or after thinking. And one of the best example was when Ma'am Carnella asked us to define the word assessment in your own words. Second is 1-minute paper. It is an active learning strategy that requires minimal preparation on the part of the teacher. During a 1-minute paper exercise, students are given 1 minute to write a response to a question posed by the teacher and simply be collected for review by the teacher. This technique is best used after discussion. For example, during last few minutes of a class period, ask students to write what is the most important thing I learned today. And lastly, muddiest point. It is similar to 1-minute paper, but only ask students to describe what they didn't understand about the lesson. This assessment gives you a picture of misconceptions and misconfusions that still exist in the student's mind. Determine what feedback you want. Figure out what is of most value or where students struggle the most. And that's the end of my report. Next to report is Ma'am Berliza Lorena, the second level of classroom assessment techniques.
Good day everyone. This is the continuation of the classroom assessment technique topic, which is the assessing skill in application and performance. The assessing skill in application and performance consists of the following: the directed paraphrasing, the application cards, the student-generated test questions, and the class modeling. In the directed paraphrasing, the students paraphrase part of the lesson for a specific audience. Like for example, explain in a plain language and in less than 5 minutes what you know about this computer virus. For a BP of a large insurance firm who is responsible for database security, your aim is to convince her to spend time and money vaccinating hundreds of computers. So also, the directed paraphrasing it provides an interesting, creative, and challenging way for students to summarize what they learned in their own words. Use appropriate terminology and consider how to best communicate their understanding to a specific audience. So, explaining what one has learned to others in examples and words familiar to the specific audience provides metacognitive opportunity for the learner to examine his or her own understanding and think about how to translate it that others can understand.
and listening to the other students share their paraphrase and providing peer feedback further enhances student learning. The other one is the application cards. So application cards is when students generate examples of a real work application for important principles, generalization theories, or procedures. So like for example, use the concept of cloud to assess a current or past romantic relationship. So it is found in the social exchange theory, by the way. Okay. The other one is the student-generated test question. So these are when students generate test questions and models answers for critical areas of learning. Like for example, the diagram shows the student give response to the teacher, and the teacher give feedback to the student. So the teacher was not teaching for a test, but rather devising a method to actively engage the students in the discussion of a reading assignment. So, and lastly, the class modeling or the human tableau. So, the students here transform and apply their learning into doing by physically modeling a process or representing an image. So, like for example, after oral communication, students read about the communication process. I asked them to work with a small group to perform a model of what a communication process is like. So, students might create dramatic gestures, enact a tennis match, demonstrate multi-communication using technology, and etc. And the class generates observation of what the communication process is like based on the models. So, this would be the end of my report. I hope you have learned from it, and I will leave it to the next presenter. Thank you and good day.
Thank you, Ma'am Melissa. And to continue our topic, please let me introduce myself. First, I am Ms. Renilyn Disulon, and for this afternoon, I will be giving you the techniques in assessing the skills and synthesis or creative thinking. The essence of this is that we will be able to know how our students can demonstrate their ability to create. So with these techniques, we will be able to see or evaluate them how they really learn from the lesson or how they will really create from it. I will present to you 3 techniques. So the first technique would be the one sentence summary, second would be the concept mapping, and the third one would be the invented dialogue. So I'll start with the one sentence summary. The one sentence summary is in a paragraph form. This is where we ask the questions, who does, what does, when, how. So with that, we can see that the students will really challenge itself to summarize the concept of the lesson. So for example, I would have set up it in a K-12 class, having an economic class. So having an economics class, will start the question with, okay class, for this activity, I want you to write in one whole sheet of paper, how does economy works? So with that question, we will be able to evaluate how does the student really comprehend the lesson, because when they comprehend the lesson, they will be able to explain how does the economy work. So that's it. Second would be the concept mapping. Concept mapping is the interrelation of concept. So with the concept mapping, we can see that the students can visualize their own diagram out of the concept. So for example, you would give the activity, okay class, I want you to write a concept mapping regarding the economic flow. So they would set up their own example using concept map. So they would really create their own example. They will see how they really visualize diagrams. So with that, we can also assess our students' ability to create their own concepts, how they will see it or how they will visualize. Okay, and the third one is the invented dialogue. The invented dialogue is This is where the students will be able to express their opinion, or they can conclude whatever theories they have been learning. So whatever applications they would have, so they can create their own judgment, their own opinions. So for example, we have three competing economic theories: the Fisherman, the Friedman, and the Fisher-Yan. So we could have asked for activity like, okay class, for this activity, I want you to write who among the three really applies the economic theory in this time of pandemic. So with that, we can imply that students really really understand the concept they were explaining, because with explaining them, then concluding them, you will see how they see it as a whole. So I hope that you get something from me this afternoon, and we'll be adapting it in the near future. So thank you so much. And
Back to you, sir.
Thank you, reporters, for the interesting discussion. It was emphasized that techniques or classroom assessment techniques are relatively quick and formative evaluation methods that help you check student understanding in real-life situation. Formative evaluations are most effective when they are done frequently and the information is used to effect immediate adjustment in the day-to-day operation of the class. O karon, atong saylan ang impormasyon sa topic na appropriateness of assessment tools. Sa gikaingon pa, ang assessment tool usa kabutang nga gimugna aron tabangan ang mga magtutudlo aron maila ang potensyal o kakulangon sa usa ka estudyante. Aron disaylan ang mas lalong nga pagsabot sa maong topic, atong paminaw ang last reporters. Pasok!
Thank you so much, sir. Okay, and good morning, everyone. So in this report, we are going to review about appropriateness of assessment tools. So first, what is assessment tools? When we say assessment tools, it is primarily designed to help educators to identify the strengths and weaknesses of learners' literacy and numeracy skills. I will give you 3 examples. Number 1, checklist. Number 2, grading guide. And the third one is poster presentation. Okay, and let's go for the assessment method. So if learning targets are clearly stated, assessment can be precise and accurate. So assessment method comes from objective test and subjective test. When we say objective test, it is a type of test that requires students to select the correct response from several alternatives or to supply a word or short phrase to answer a question. While subjective test, it is a type of test that permits the student to organize and present an original answer. There is no specific answer. Now, let's discuss again performance assessment. So when we say performance assessment, it is an assessment in which students are asked to perform a real-world task that demonstrate meaningful application of essential knowledge and skills. It is a kind of task that lets students perform instead of writing. Okay, it can be an oral presentation rather than the traditional exam. And that's all for my report. Thank you so much. My name is Mirijan Sanatorio, and here comes Sir Riclan Sanchez to discuss more about appropriateness of assessment tools.
Thank you, ma'am. Portfolio is an assessment that based on the collection of students' work that exhibits effort, progress, and achievements over a period of time. Questioning. It is used to collect assessment data by asking oral questions. Also known as the Socratic method, is a form of cooperative arguments dialogue discussion between individuals based on asking and answering questions to stimulate critical thinking and to draw ideas and underlying presumptions. Observation technique has 2 forms. We have the formal observation and the informal observation. Formal observation are planned in advance, assess oral report presentation. While in informal observation, it is done spontaneously during instruction and working behavior of a student. Next would be self-report. Self-report used to evaluate both performance and attitude. It is a process where students are given a chance to reflect and rate their own work and judge how well they have performed in relation to a set of assessment criteria. Students track and evaluate their own progress or performance, making use to a self-rating checklist that lists several characteristics or activities presented to the subject of a study. And that would be all for the appropriateness of assessment tools. Sir?
Daghang salamat sa mga makahulugan ng report. Atong gisayran nga ang punong assessment o pagsusi usa ka dalan uyabi bahin sa pagtabang pagkaton sa usa ka estudyante ug makahatag og kini motibasyon sa usa ka estudyante diya sa iyang pagtunga sa eskwelahan. Ug sa di ko patapuson ang akong tahas karon hapuna, bilang mo kamo sa usa ka panultiyon. Ang pagkawalay ng pagkagan sa Malaw, mo'y sinugdanan sa atong pagkaginawdaw. Daghang salamat ug maayong hapon sa atong tanan.